Hello, and welcome to the Angus and Pete Show. Views and opinions are strictly those of the presenters and their guests and should not be taken as advice. Goodness knows, we're not qualified to advise you about anything. Side effects may include mild amusement and occasional enlightenment with feelings of embarrassment, apathy, disappointment, and pity.
Welcome to episode 16. I'm Angus Pacey.
And I'm Pete Brown, and we are the Angus and Pete Show.
A place where you could listen to two guys chatting about the riveting world of customer engagement.
You know, customer engagement, otherwise known as contact center, customer service, customer experience, CX, or whatever else you're calling it this week.
And if you want to know more about us, check us out on LinkedIn. So, first things first, Pete. What have we got in the postbag this week?
Well, we had quite a lot in the postbag this week, but we had quite a big topic drop, and I've decided to focus on that rather than going through too many others. So quality over quantity, I think, is the term.
Okay.
So Dan from London sent me a link and he said, "Hi Pete, what do you think about this?"
Okay.
I clicked on the link and it took me to an article actually in the New York Post. And the headline is Teleperformance using AI to neutralize Indian accents.
Okay. That's going to generate a bit of comment, I would imagine.
It has, absolutely. So this happened towards the end of February. Teleperformance, the world's largest call center operator, according to the New York Times, is using AI software to modify Indian accents in real time. And the aim is to improve clarity in customer interactions. And it says with Western clients.
Okay.
I feel quite uncomfortable talking about this, but we're going to persevere for the good of humanity and our listeners. There's a technology partner involved. I can't remember the name. And their pitch is, well, you know, the software also reduces background noise and it's designed to enhance communication while addressing accent-based discrimination.
So they're disguising a sweatshop, basically.
Well, they're jumping on the PC wagon, aren't they? It has generated an ethical debate. It sparked mixed reactions. Some people are praising the effort to improve customer experience, and others are basically criticising it for not actually addressing accent-based discrimination, but reinforcing all the stereotypes. So I've thought about this for a little bit, and I can only really see one positive thing. And that is it protects jobs in places arguably that need them most, which is, I think, is a good thing. But really, it's about maximising profit for Teleperformance, isn't it? Because we know, rightly or wrongly, there's a bit of a backlash, outsourcing, the accents, and not just the accents, actually, the cultural awareness, the words, the phraseology, just makes people feel a little bit distant. And it has been an issue. But bringing it all back on shore costs money. So I think, you know, being a cynic, yeah, you can make up some justifications, but fundamentally it's all about the bottom line. And everything else I can see doesn't really stack up. What do you think?
Sounds like they're kind of trying to neutralize an objection. But at the same time, what they're doing, I think, is impacting on cultural identities. And I think there are two problems with that. One, I don't think ethically it's correct. But secondly, it's going to screw some of the AI stuff that's going on. So where you've got sentiment analysis and all that sort of thing, where it's been trained to specific countries and specific, let's call them races or nationalities at this point in time, is it going to work as well? But the flip side is this going to really work when people discover that the people that they're talking to aren't
the people they think they are, right? So, and for me, that you've hit the nail on the head. Where does this go? Because if you can do something as sophisticated as modifying an accent in real time and make that voice sound completely different, think you're talking to a male when you're speaking to a female. You could be speaking to someone of a certain demographic when you want to speak to someone else. It becomes very rapidly a trust issue. I was at an event yesterday, an AI event, very well-known CX vendor, a very good event, actually. There was a speaker there, and he said that AI improves consistency in CX, it improves accessibility, it improves efficiency, and it improves effectiveness for all parties. AI won't make your customers love you, but it will build trust and give you a platform on which to build a really strong relationship. Not if you're not sure about the credentials and even the accent of the person you're talking to. So Teleperformance, I think you might be undermining AI's trust. Good job. If there's anyone from Teleperformance listening, let us know, because we'd really like to hear from you.
So it's the first company that I know of that's deployed shallow fakes.
It's deployed what?
Shallow fakes.
Shallow fakes as opposed to deep fakes. Yeah,
fakes,
like it. Anyway, we've done that. There's a whole episode there. Watch this space. The second post was from Eleanor in Stockholm. So Eleanor is a CX sales specialist for quite a large reseller partner. And she says, I'm in the middle of a CX sales nightmare. She's been working on a major CX sale. It's visible all across her organization. She's smashed the sales process. She's put in a great proposal. She's won preferred bidder status against some really stiff competition. She's done all the right things. She's got a really tight relationship with a couple of champions that are right behind the solution and were basically taken off to the board for sign-off. And she believed it was a formality. Anyway, the business case was rejected.
Okay, not the first time it's happened to people.
She doesn't know why, and it appears that her champions don't know why either. So she said, guys, while I'm updating my CV, just in case, can you help me understand where it all went wrong and maybe give me some pointers for getting it right next time? So where does it all go wrong? You get to the point where your buyer says, Eleanor, good job, preferred status. I'm going to see the boss tomorrow to get the budget all approved and signed off. What most salespeople do then is run around the office, whoop, whoop, high fives, bump the forecast to 75%. Everyone's happy. They assume that the champions know exactly how they're going to sell your product internally. The sellers assume the buyers can sell.
That's true.
And that is where it all goes pear-shaped, because they can't. In order to support them, they give them a copy of the RFP or the proposal. They give them a nice summary of their pitch deck. This is what, don't forget about this, don't forget about that. And the champion says, yeah, cool, it's fine. Everything's going to be great. However, Gartner have said in their research that up to 75% of buyers are inexperienced at presenting business cases to senior people in their own businesses. And actually, when you think about it, we sell this stuff all the time. Buyers don't buy it all the time. It could be a once in a career move. So that's a massive assumption that they're experienced. Quite often, your champions are generic. The project manager, program manager, are they CX experts? So not only are they not experienced in doing the business case, they're also not experienced necessarily in the whys and wherefores of what they just bought or want to buy from you.
And quite often they're too junior.
Right, exactly that. So they get phased by that, underestimate the situation. And if you don't hit them with the right stuff, bottom line up front, absolute clarity, laser precision on the business case, and not a load of fluff and dump, then you're basically going to run into trouble. And the boss ends up saying, yeah, that's really interesting. Well done. Can't justify that at the moment. Not compelling enough. Come and see us next quarter. And then you're on the indecision slope. So what can we do for Eleanor? What can we do instead?
That's inadvertently, and we didn't kind of rehearse this for those of you that are listening, but you described pretty well what it felt like going in to present a business case in a very large organization where I had that opportunity. And I will tell you now that when you go into the execs for sign-off, one, they absolutely do want that bottom line. They want absolute clarity, and they want it literally in 2 or 3 slides because they have got a lot on their plate at that point in time. So you've got to really know what you're talking about.
Right. And that was you as an internal.
That was me as an internal, presenting it internally, representing what I was being sold.
Did you get your business case approved?
Yes.
Right. Now you need to tell us how, please, for Eleanor. Let's see if we can save her career.
So I think one of the clear things, there are a couple of things that you've got to think about. From a champion perspective, don't have one champion. You've absolutely got to know what are the compelling items that whoever they're presenting to needs to hear. How are you going to deal with it if they object? Make sure that whoever's presenting your business case to the execs can say exactly what you want them to say.
Okay, and just to be clear, just in case anyone doesn't know, the champion, or champions actually, because there's often more than one of them, are those people that are very appropriately and very professionally helping you, coaching you to be successful because they believe it's in their best interest to do it. They are your sponsors on the inside.
Yeah, sponsors, or quite often they're called the coaches.
Right, cool, yeah.
No, your coaches. The other thing that you've got to work up early on is what are the objections going to be? So if you've got sponsors or champions in the organization that are helping you, and I was one of those to the vendors as well, I mean, that's a natural progression. If taking something in to get signed off. You're a coach or a champion. Ask these people, what questions are you going to get asked? So that you can brainstorm around it. And it might be budget, it might be competing priorities, it might be risk, but they're business things. Please do not think it's all technical feature stuff. Execs don't care.
Right. So a seller actually doing a bit of role play with their buying champion wouldn't be a bad thing.
I would absolutely brainstorm it out and role play it out. The other one is that you've got to arm whoever's taking that case in for you, your champion, with the killer points.
Right, okay.
Very clearly, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What's the cost of not doing anything? What is your solution? And you've got to explain your solution for idiots. These people are not experts. And what are your proof points? And then once you've kind of got those things in your head, arm your coach, your champion, with a business case summary. And when I say business case summary, not a 60-sheet Excel workbook and 500 slides explaining it. It needs to go on one page because they need to be able to look at it 5 minutes before they go in and be able to articulate that really, really clearly.
So you've spoken about structure the conversation, state the problem, state the cost of inaction, state your solution, and give some proof. What does that summary look like?
Think about it as a structured argument of why the organization needs to invest in something. What are they going to do? There are 3 areas in it. One is, what are the financial metrics? Your finance guys will be all over that. What are the operational benefits? And how does this fit with the corporate strategy? Now, those are the things. So financial ROI models, cost savings, revenue growth, the obvious things. Operational stuff, efficiency, automation, reduced workload type things. And corporate strategy, how does this help achieve the broader company goals, digital transformation, really 60,000 foot level? Because that's what the execs will be looking for.
Okay, so we've said the execs and they and the board. Who are they? Who are these faceless pinstripe suits that strike fear into the heart of the internal buyer and make or break careers?
The people that most salespeople say that they are engaging with and are not.
The C-suite.
Yeah, the C-suite. Everybody's engaging with the C-suite, and very rarely are they. So it's the people that ultimately sign off at the top. So the CFO, the CEO, the CIO, COO. I mean, just pick a 3-letter acronym. They're all there.
What sort of questions would they ask you? How would you be able to spot a CFO based on what he says to you?
The obvious one. The CFO is going to talk numbers.
Right, of course he is. Yeah.
What's the impact on our bottom line? How much money do I need to invest? And you've got to be able to answer that with, we're going to reduce handling time by 20%. We're going to reduce staffing costs, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
The CEO will be strategy focused. How does this align with our long-term strategy? He's going to leave the numbers to the CFO. You're going to get, CIO people, IT and security people. They're going to be talking about security, compliance, integration. How do we ensure customers' data protected? How does this integrate with our different systems? Those sorts of things. And then you get down a level into the operating office guys that are looking at, deep operations. Contact center leaders might be pulled in. It's quite often that they will pull in somebody, a middle manager that's focused on contact centers, to come and advise.
Because I guess what we do, whilst we keep saying, everyone should understand CX because we're all consumers, ultimately a board is not familiar with the real detail and maybe even some of the terminology. So I guess they have an interpreter and a guide in there to make sure that they at least understand what they're making a decision about and what's important and what's not.
Yeah, if you go and talk detailed stuff, they will go, no, they're looking at the broad thing. And remember, these guys are there to return value to shareholders and improve that. So that's what they're going to be looking at.
The procurement get involved in the boardroom conversation as well?
Well, in my experience, they weren't in the room.
Okay.
But they will be involved in the briefing packs that go into the room.
Okay.
So they will definitely, and remember, they will be looking at what are the budget constraints. There will be board directives that say you've got to reduce the cost base by X. Procurement will be all over that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But they're advisors. They're not necessarily in the room.
So I mentioned this event that I attended yesterday. Another soundbite was talking about how effective buyers are at realising their ROI around CX. specifically around CX. And it's something like 85% of C-suite individuals in a survey, and I can't remember the details, and if I can, I'll put it in the show notes. Something like 85% were either uncomfortable or plain didn't know about the profile of their ROI after a significant technology purchase, which is stunning, isn't it?
I'm not going to say which organization I was working for at the time. One of the middle managers that was one of the stakeholders that I was working with, I was a product manager at the time. He turned around to me and he said, make your business case look really good. The one thing I can tell you, in 5 years' time, nobody's going to look at the business case again.
So there's a game to play like everything else, right?
There is an element of the game to play, but I would not advise that people in the sales environment invent it on the hoof. You know, you've got to also remember that there is what we call FOMO, that fear of messing up. You've got to recognize that people are not going to go out on a limb if they're uncomfortable because they don't want to lose their jobs over it.
Right. I'm in the boardroom and I've got my summary pack and I've now got to tell a story that relates to something. I guess someone's done a lot of work. If Eleanor's got to this point, then there's probably a load of information in there that's useful. So I guess the trick is pick out the stuff that's relevant and leave the stuff that isn't outside the boardroom. How do you start to prioritize what the real nice, valuable, juicy inputs are and which stuff to just disregard?
Do some homework. Go and see what the current state looks like. What is actually happening? What are they using? What communication channels are in place? Are there expensive items that they've got to maintain? What integrations do they have? Understand the landscape really well, because if you don't understand that, you can't take them from now to future state.
Identifying some specific pain points all helps you to inform that very short and sweet story that you're taking into the boardroom. And I guess when your champions are in there, having them armed with a few very tangible, very specific examples has got to be a good thing as well, right?
Yeah, and you're not going to get them all from one champion. And this is why I always say, if you've got one champion, you're really at risk, because one person does not have all this information in their heads. And quite often they don't know what the other people are thinking. So this is basically building your baseline.
So we've got that current state. I guess in order to look at a gap and make a proposal, you've also got to understand the desired state. Do champions always know what the desired state of the business is?
No, they don't. I think there are two things, and it goes back to discovery. You know, a lot of people in our space think discovery is technical discovery, and you go and answer a 60-page questionnaire about micro-technical details. Discovery is an ongoing process, and when you're talking to your champions, they will all have little pieces of the puzzle, and you've got to put them together. So if you're looking for key goals of the business, you know, are they trying to reduce costs, grow their revenue, improve service levels? It's quite possible that you will get cost reduction from somebody that's finance will have that, or a senior manager will have that. Revenue growth, the same thing. Service improvements will come from a totally different part of the business. You've got to put this puzzle together. And if there's a digital transformation going on, or there's somebody's looking at deploying AI, you've got to find out who's doing that and make those people your champions, because you've got to get that information.
So going back to the CFO, the finance man or woman, you said they're all about the bottom line. They're all about the money. Obviously, the clue's in the title. Build it out a little bit.
They'll be looking at the cost of ownership things. What are the current costs? What are the future costs? What's the cost of the investment? All the financial metrics. So they'll talk about hurdle rates and all that sort of thing. My experience, they are some of the best coaches.
Okay.
Because they know exactly what the execs are going to be looking at and what their thresholds are for different things. Don't go in and say there's a 5-year payback on something, that it's got to be a three-year payback. If you don't understand that early on, you can't shape your proposal to that. So I think that's absolutely key. Finance is a huge coach.
Right. Okay. And then you mentioned operational people being around and about. What topics are we covering to address that?
Operations is efficiency and productivity. So it's like, can you improve agent performance? What role does automation play, AI, flexibility of the workforce? Are you going to make it easier for people? Don't forget the workforce. That's now a big topic.
So you just reminded me of something, actually. You were talking about your champions may be very effective and very strong supporters, but they're not always senior or experienced. And I remember a business case falling flat on its face because the people presenting it were thinking about them and the benefits to them rather than the benefits of the business. And basically, it was a bunch of fairly senior, but not very senior, operational managers in a contact center. And they went in and said, the benefits of this are basically, it makes our lives easier in terms of automated management of certain functions around agents, automated reporting. And the CFO's like, so basically you're asking me to spend £750,000 to make your lives easier. That is never going to happen. Go away. It was almost what he said. So just bear it in mind, right? For all of the chit chat that you get about employee empowerment and making your lives easier, when the CFO's involved, it very rarely pans out like that, does it?
No. And I think the other thing is that understand from a champion perspective who is taking the business case in as the prime, and be very close to them, because I went through a real experience where the person that was the champion taking it in had a discussion with a different vendor, supplier. Suddenly we had to go and look at that and rework the business case. And luckily we were close enough to that individual that we saw it coming. So we didn't get to the 11th hour. So I think stakeholder management and business cases are two peas in a pod. They're tightly aligned.
Right, okay. So that gives Eleanor a bit of an idea of the complexion of the people and the process and what goes on. I think we said something at the beginning about role-playing and trying to predict what little hurdles could be put up for you. Have you got some examples of those? What tricks have you seen played in the boardroom to make the game interesting?
These always come out. It's too expensive. You've got to have examples up your sleeves and return on investment projections. Don't go in there empty-handed. You know it's going to come. We don't have the budget right now. That is very rarely true. Budget is always available if it is something that they really want to do. So you've got to have options to reduce how the challenge of fitting into the available money effectively. Existing system works fine. Here we go. FOMO all over the place. At that point in time, you've got to become a little bit of a bad cop, going, right, yeah, you're inefficient, your technology is outdated, what are the risks? And risk scares people in the boardroom. If you think about it, they don't like risk.
Absolutely. We covered that in the pitch episode, right? The board is just as risk averse at a personal level as everyone else in the business.
And the other one is complexity. Integration will be too complex. Have case studies right up your sleeve that you can just pull out that says, this is how we've done it. It's actually not scary. We've got all the answers to this. Those are 4. There are a couple more, but I think those are the ones that you can get over.
And then you get weird ones, right? Because shit just happens sometimes, doesn't it? And you can't predict it. Sounds like, Eleanor, you could have probably done a better job on this, but there are occasions when you just can't see it coming. And again, I've been reminded of another story from my dim and distant past where I was working with an owner-managed business, quite a large business, and there was a gentleman who was the MD, and his wife was active in the business, in HR. So they were employing about 200 people, and I was in the box seat to collect an order for a couple of £100,000 for a nice little on-prem contact center. This is before the cloud. This is just, again, demonstrating relentlessly how old I'm getting. And I'd done the job. Everything was fine. On a Friday, the MD says, Monday, come in, we'll shake hands the good old-fashioned way and get the order signed. On Sunday evening, he phones me on my mobile and says, there's no point in having the meeting tomorrow. I can't place the order. I said, oh, okay, that's not good. Is everything okay? He said, nope. I said, okay, well, when can we place the order? He said, never. Okay, this sounds a little bit dramatic. And then he told me what had happened. He went home on the Friday. His wife said, I'm not happy. I'm leaving you. And she owned 50% of the business. It was a 50-50 split. Now, I can assure you I was nothing to do with the fact that this lady was leaving.
So you weren't coaching her?
No, well, I wasn't coaching anyone. But you know what I did learn from that? Find out who owns the shares, particularly when you're dealing with an owner-managed business. The people that tell you they're in charge sometimes aren't. So there's another little tip. It's really easy to do. Get on Company's House or wherever, or your equivalent in your countries, and find out who really owns the business, because it's not always the C-suite.
No. You think about it now, how many companies have got investment houses or VCs in the
Right.
background or angels in the background pulling the strings?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that can be quite a dynamic environment. If you've got external investment, somebody once described VCs to me as a set of traffic lights, red, amber, green, and all the lights are always on all the time. You haven't got a bloody clue what they want next.
Actually, the other thing from a stakeholder perspective, just think about this one as well. Quite often, and I have seen this one firsthand, non-execs pitch up at the board meetings when
Right,
these are signed off. So they're not accessible in the business. And if you're lucky or unlucky, depending on which way the wind's blowing, one of those non-execs knows what you're talking about.
Yeah. Or is sitting on the board of another company that may or may not have used your products before.
So if you know it's going to that level for sign-off, do have a look, see who the non-execs are as well, because I have absolutely seen a non-exec derail a sign-off.
Right. So there we go. Business case, arm wrestling with the board. It's all very interesting.
So I know you love summarizing things, Pete. So how would you summarize this in takeaways?
I think we've spoken a lot about who the people are, but in a bullet point, understand the stakeholders, like properly understand who they are, do your research, understand as much as you can, check them out on LinkedIn, check them out on Companies House, check them out everywhere, stalk them, know them, and then tailor your messages to their persona and maybe to them as individuals, who knows. Focus on the business case, state the problem, state the cost of inaction, which is a big thing. How many times have we said in these podcasts, your biggest competitor is apathy and indecision? Demonstrate the cost of that, because there is always a cost to doing nothing. State the solution and be very clear about your proof points, which could be references and other people doing things. But again, be careful about that, because I've lost a deal by saying, oh, all your competitors are using it. Yeah, well, that's a bloody good reason why we're not going to. So you need to be careful about that. Understand the common pitfalls with champions, which largely are about your incorrect assumptions about how experienced they are and how eloquent they're going to be when they're faced with the dragon's den. To help them, prep them, give them a summary of what's important, do a bit of role play, get them battle ready. Get them to a point where you are confident that they are confident that they're going to deliver your message, because after all, it is your message. We spoke about current and future benefits. Analyze the current state and demonstrate some low-hanging fruit, it's called, isn't it? Some quick wins, those sorts of things. Boards like that stuff. But the real meat is in a medium to longer term position. So cost savings, revenue growth, operational efficiency, enhanced customer experience. You need to find out what's important and poke those buttons. And finally, notwithstanding my story about the unpredictability of boardroom marriage, predict and navigate objections.
Yeah, rehearse this.
Try and understand them, think about them, you've come across them, talk to your colleagues. I think that's a good summary.
One thing I'm going to add, when you're putting a business case or you're putting an ROI study in, don't use generic numbers, use their numbers.
Right, okay, understood. So, Eleanor, I hope that was good enough. I hope you can use some of this information to maybe save your job this time round, and if not, you'll be ready for the interview for the new one. I think with this, it's good stuff. So, on that basis, Angus, I think we're ready to wrap.
I think so. We'll be back next time with episode 17.
In the meantime, follow the Angus and Pete Show page on LinkedIn for news and notifications. Please message us directly, particularly if you're Teleperformance, to tell us what you think about the show, what you want us to talk about, how we're doing, and keep the postbag bulging.
The show's available on all your favorite podcast platforms, and Peter's been putting lots of logos on our LinkedIn page so you can see all those platforms there. So please listen, like, subscribe, and share to help us get the word out. But Pete,
Every week.
it's joke of the week time.
So a newbie operations manager goes to his seasoned, grey-haired, cynical boss and says, I've made the mistake of being someone's champion and I've got to go to the board tomorrow. How do I present the perfect business case? So he sits back in his chair and looks up, sighs, nods and says, step 1, inflate the business benefits by 300%. Step 2, underestimate the costs by at least 50%. Step 3, have at least one bullet point with the word synergies in it. And step 4, hope that nobody actually ever implements it.
Or revisits the business case.
That's it. Now, there's something that goes with it, actually, because what he also said was, and if you're struggling with that, you might want to get a consultant in to help you. But be aware, the consultant's approach to a business case is very much like a weather forecast. If everything's nice and sunny, they'll take the credit. But if it starts to get thundery and showery, they'll blame it on you and changing market conditions.
Well, I'd love to hear from a consultant on this one.
Well, a chance would be a fine thing. Maybe we should do an episode on consultants, Angus. Again, watch this space. So, cheers, Angus.
Cheers, Pete.
Thanks for tuning in to the Angus and Pete Show. Remember, it's based on the personal views and opinions of the hosts and their guests. If you're feeling aggrieved or litigious, take a chill pill. There's already enough stress in the world. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform for more episodes. We'll see you next time. Oh, and tell your friends.